Hi, Alexandria. I'm Alan Repke, Inform TV. I want you to look at a special meeting of the Alexandria City Council that was held on February 26th. It's the latest on what they're proposing for changes at the RCC relating to hockey, ice time, curling, figure skating, broom ball, and whatever. And I think it's important you all look at it and to see what stage it's at right now. And in the near future, I'll make some comments to you on the community channel as well as my YouTube channel, Inform TV channel on YouTube. And so we get something done out there, and we get something done the whole community, the whole area can be proud of. So today, no opinions or viewpoints other than the community should view this. I hope District 206 would send this video out as educational community TV, and with their email addresses, as well as the Hockey Association, the Figure Skating Association, and all the businesses of Alexandria that are supporting making changes out at the RCC to draw more people into Alexandria, as well as serve better the people that are using it right now. That site has great potential, and I just want to make sure we don't make it too small or do it in a way in the long run we regret some of the changes. But in a democracy, we have to have a process, and I think this particular meeting is very good to show that progress. Make sure you look at it, and if you can support Inform TV, Box 333 in Alexandria, so I can update my equipment and do other things for our great community here in Alexandria, it would be appreciated. Thank you much, and look at this video, all of you.
It is 4 o'clock. The special meeting for the Alex City Council is called to order. Start with the RCC expansion project.
All right. Tom Betty, Adam Barnett are here from JLG. A couple things we're going to walk through tonight. On the schedule right now, we have March 11th as the potential advertising for bids for the project. So Tom and Adam have put together a little bit of a presentation kind of summarizing where we're at in the design process. So we'll talk a little bit about that. And we also, on the 11th, we're going to have a design services agreement amendment that we want to talk about with the council. We talked with the budget committee about that last week. So we'll walk through that a little bit briefly as well with all of you. So I have this up on the screen, gentlemen.
Perfect.
And then, so if you want to, well, here, Adam.
Sure.
You can scroll through it at your own time
that sounds
if
great.
you want to do that. Or you can plug it into your laptop.
Yeah, no, this is just fine. You know, so I think kind of high level of where we're at today. You know, we met in December and had gotten to a point, design development, and RJM had completed a construction estimate, and it was tracking, I think, higher than what everybody wanted it to. And so since then, we've gone through somewhat kind of rigorous redesign, shifting of scope, shifting some things around in an effort to try and get the phase 1 and 2 costs down as low as possible to make a more likely feasible project for the city. So we've been working really hard at that in developing the construction documents and the specifications that will go out to bid if approved by you guys in March. We are about 95% done with those documents. We actually have a 6-hour meeting scheduled tomorrow with Marty and Vinny to flip through every single page of those construction drawings and just make sure that they're on board with everything that's included. And it's kind of a last chance for Vinny to say, hey, we got to think about this or look at adjusting anything. So
with trying to knock the price down, are you eliminating or shifting it over to part of phase 3?
A little bit of both, actually. I'll kind of touch on that as we go here, Roger. So, let's see, Marty, is there a
PDF, so you can scroll.
Just scroll. Okay, yeah. Perfect. So first thing we'll talk about is the site plan. Let's see if I zoom out just a smidge here. So this is the extent of the site plan work that will be bid out in phase one. So if you recall, previously, we were including all of the additional parking on this west side, which isn't really required by city code until we add that additional space of the third ice sheet. So, you know, we kind of took a step back and said, there's a lot of nice parking out there right now. It's in pretty good shape. And let's see if we can't save some money or kind of defer the cost of that additional parking to the future phase and retain as much of that parking that's there right now. So with that, some additional asphalt along the west side, some additional parking stalls over here. You can see the white is new sidewalk and site paving. And then there's some additional utilities that are going to be addressed with this. So we are going to loop in the water main, so we'll get that full loop completed. And then we also need to build out the whole stormwater retention basin to its size for the full build out. In phase one, just sequentially with construction, that makes a lot more sense there.
So that parking on the left side up there, Vinny, that's all storage stuff there now, isn't it?
Yeah.
So is that,
Right, yep. So you can see it is held off the building a little ways, but
Okay.
when I go to the full build-out site plan, Roger, you can see, so here's kind of the full build-out, and I will point out that this hasn't been updated since the land swap has more or less been finalized. We have a layout that runs the parking aisles to east-west and supports people coming in from the west off of 82.
with that storage stuff, they have to find a different place to put that all then, or is?
Yeah, so with that, one of the things that we're doing is we're leaving some buffer space up here in this corner where you could kind of build out large storage facilities in the future. So something, 2,000 square feet, a couple overhead doors, that being his crew can kind of keep stuff tucked away and not have to sit out there. So that's kind of the long-term picture. But here you can see the phase 3 piece coming in the future, and then at that time we'd revise that south parking, and then this would be that full build out.
How big does the stormwater retention pond have to be?
Off the top of my head, I don't know the answer to that. It's a civil engineering more so is the ones that get into the nitty gritty.
It just looks like the size of an outdoor rink.
Yeah.
Just saying.
Yeah. The other thing too, I don't believe it's intended to be a wet pond. I think
Sure.
kind of like what's out there now, it'll detain that water when the rain event comes, and it'll kind of slowly discharge and help control the rate of discharge. So that's the extent of the site, and then when we get to the building, overall, kind of the general layout is still as it has been, with the main entry to the west.
Zoom that in a little bit, just focus on.
Oh yeah, yep, that's a good point, Marty. Yeah, we can dial this in here. So, main entry to the west, renovated locker rooms, kind of underneath that existing RCC concourse, and then the new expanded locker room in the corridor, the new lobby space, new concessions, space for figure skating. But a couple of highlights on this plan in terms of things that have changed. Initially, we were doing a lot of renovation work on the south end of the west rink, and we basically pulled that out of the project. We said, you know what, there's bathrooms there, they're functioning. There's some significant dollars that we can save by pulling that out. That's something that could be, new finishes and that sort of thing down the road after this work is complete, and it wouldn't really have a significant impact necessarily. But we are including the renovation expansion of those existing lobby bathrooms. With the new lobby, those are going to be used quite heavily. In their current state, they are in need of some attention, if you will, as well as expanding. We are setting this up to support users when that third rink comes online in terms of the quantity of building occupants. So we are increasing the number of stalls with this work here. Any questions on
level?
Yeah.
You want to talk a little bit about that, the new service room on the west side, and then the
Yeah.
the meeting room location, that
Yep.
relocation
Yes,
that
thank you.
was done.
Yeah. So the first thing, as I've already mentioned, was a new water service room over on this west end. So right now, the water and the electric kind of come into the RCC somewhere kind of in this vicinity. And we really can't leave those utilities kind of, I'll say, locked within the center of the building. You want those on an outside wall. If anything happens in the future, you've got access to those. And that's really, where they should be located. So as we loop that water main around the building back to 82, we're creating a new water service room over on this west end. So that'll bring a new water service, sprinkler riser, all that good stuff, and then that'll kind of backfeed all the existing plumbing that's staying in the building. It'll feed the new plumbing, if you will. And then with when I get to the second floor, you'll see where we had some additional renovations on the RCC side at that kind of concourse level. We pulled scope out of there, and so part of that was getting some meeting room space in down on this main level near the entry. So if there's groups with the city that need to meet out there with Vinny and staff, they can use that. That could be a tournament or an event headquarters. It could be a dry land event, food show. People check in there. It's really a multi-purpose room that can serve a lot of functions.
And we did add a nice storage room to that, so it allows you to be flexible with furniture change out if you want rows of chairs versus tables and chairs. Give you some flexibility.
So that area then, if we're not gonna fix those bathrooms and that, it's gonna be a wash doing it now or later? We're not doubling the cost to do it later?
I would agree with that. I don't know if I'm gonna say no additional cost. It's always gonna cost more in the future, right?
Yeah.
But with bringing the water over here, it should be, you're not gonna be tearing up new work
Okay.
Yeah.
to do those enhancements in the future.
That's some of those, push and pulls that we have to do because of budget, so.
And comment out, maybe, I don't want to say this wrong, by adding the toilet space and the fixtures in the lobby bathrooms, we're setting it up so when we do add phase 3, we don't have to add additional bathrooms.
Correct.
Our counts will still be okay. So the bathrooms in the west rink and in the main level of the RCC that we're not going to touch now, we're not going to be triggered to be forced to do them in the future. It can be at a time whenever the city decides you need to get them done.
Okay.
We just, as we went through this process, the team just said, we don't have to do these. And if we're trying to save scope and save dollars, let's pull those out.
So we don't need that for the count?
No.
Correct.
Correct. The lobby bathrooms, they'll still be there, they'll still function, they'll go toward the count. But those lobby ones, there'll be a significant increase in the number of fixtures, and that'll be the main, that will get used.
The other big move here is really, if you look at it, we eliminated the work in the existing west rink. We eliminated the work in the upper level, so we don't have piecemeal stuff all around the building, which psychologically, as contractors bid it, they see their scope of work. It's in an area, and you tend to get better pricing because they're not worried about the what ifs over these one-of little remodels and where are they going to get burned. So I think it makes sense from that standpoint, keeping the project clean the bid.
Okay.
Absolutely. So if we move to the concourse level, like Marty was just mentioning, so originally at previous design development phase, we had a bunch of renovation work happening in here. We were putting, making these 2 bathrooms into 4 bathrooms. We were putting in a meeting room over here, and then we were doing a bunch of new finishes and other renovation work. So that scope has been pulled out, but our team and our engineers are putting in the necessary infrastructure. So if you did want to do that in the future, you'll be able to. So the size of the plumbing piping that's coming to feed these bathrooms will be sized where you could put those 4 back in there and not have to tear a bunch of stuff off. And same with kind of on the HVAC side, the air handling, we've been kind of trying to plan that and set you guys up. So like you were kind of getting, Roger, you're not going to rip out a bunch of new work if you want to do that. So, and then with that, before we kind of had a large open kind of circulation space in here, and we kind of revisited that and said, let's put that meeting room down by the entry and we've got some space here that we could program out. So we've got Vinny and his team staff offices in this location here. We've got a single user restroom that's code required, and then we've got admin offices, and then rink manager's office, and then we've got kind of a mother's or wellness room, you know, or all the different things people, you know, might have needs for to be away from lots of activity, which we all know if you've been out there like last weekend, there was a lot of activity. So, and noise. So that's the concourse level, and then open to below that kind of lower entry, if you will. In the previous design development, when this was being designed to meet B3, we had a completely different air handling, heating, ventilation, and cooling system. And we actually had mechanical rooms on this end and on this end, kind of on those upper floors. And with the kind of cost savings and removing that, we were able to go to a much more economical heating and cooling system. And that meant that we didn't need equipment to be indoors, right? So we were able to actually pull some space out of the building and kind of reduce the envelope, if you will. All right, if we go to the next plan, this would be that kind of uppermost mezzanine level, we're calling it. So you can see the stairs as they work their way up from that ice level. And then we've got the new elevator that would go in from that ice level up to this highest level. But you'll see what we're showing is that this whole area, I think it's about 4,600 square feet, 4,200 square feet. We are bidding that as an alternate bid to the contractors. So the base bid we'll get from them will not include that floor, its finishes, what have you. That just seemed like something that, you know, if push comes to shove and we really need to hit a number, let's get a price on that piece and you can take it or leave it on bid day.
What would be there if you don't put?
Yeah, great question. So if that wouldn't go in, this would all be just kind of open 2-story height, Roger. So,
Okay.
but you'll see the elevator would be, I'll say, kind of stubbed out up to that 3rd floor. And then the structural members that would support that floor would also go in. So it would be a matter of coming in and adding in the floor deck and the concrete and the finishes in the future if you wanted to add that back in. So trying to have some levers to pull to help control costs and give you guys options.
As we looked at this, you know, we're building, that mass is being built anyways, all the way up to the top. So as the team looked at it, as Adam noted, and we're kind of thinking of the potential programming in the future that we've talked about for health and wellness, well, this, whether if the bids are great and we can do the alternate, fantastic. If not, you know, we're in position in the future to almost really double that dry land training area that's up there now and have different kinds of possibilities to use space that we already are building, basically, at least the.
So what would be the intent of us to use that if we do put it there?
So, you know, right now there's a couple of shooting bays up there and some very primitive cardio and weight equipment. There's a few options. You can upgrade that area for use for dryland training, for shooting, or for, you know, a group of figure skaters to go up there to do stretching or whatever it may be. You could potentially move more weights in there. You know, there's been some discussion about physical therapy in the future, perhaps being leased out space. Once you have an elevator in there, this could be a potential for that as well. And, you know, way back when, you know, we had kind of that phase 4 that was going, you know, could be meeting rooms and on the lower level and then wellness area on the 2nd level. Well, if you build this entire thing out and kind of visualize that as a wide open space, you maybe can accomplish everything that you need in the future and you don't have this additional space that you have to contemplate, which is brand new 2-level square footage.
Right.
At one point, we had talked about Heartland maybe having a extra physical. Right now, we don't have that anyplace, so
Nope.
this would be a spot, if they were interested, it would maybe offset the cost of putting it up.
Hard to say. I mean, we had some preliminary discussions with them about, how much square footage you might need. One thing that we'd have to, it depends on how you use, would it be completely leased out and locked out to the public during the rest of the time, or would it be something that would be more available to everyone? You'd have to kind of determine that. And also they've kind of, I think from Alamere now has their new building over there opened up as well. And Heartland still has their setup over at North Star. I think if we either finish out that space or, as Tom noted, it's prepping it to finish out in the future, it allows us to be able to have those discussions with them. I mean, I don't want to give the impression that they'd be happy there or not happy there. We just don't know.
Yeah, okay.
When, like you mentioned too, having the elevator, now you get some furniture up there too. So if you're having an event and some group says, hey, do you have a space where we can get 50 people and have a conference or something like that, there could be potential that, this becomes a little flexible, depending on what you end up doing.
And if we just build the space, Roger, maybe this is what you were saying, we don't finish it out, but somebody comes along in the future and I'd be interested in leasing that out. Well, then maybe they would finish out the space, or their contribution could be that in the future.
Right.
They
Yeah.
do the build out.
Which we're seeing a lot of
Right.
in community
I think
buildings.
that's a good idea.
Okay.
Shakopee, Elk River, all of those, so you have that in.
Okay, all right.
But it seemed like a good way to help. The budget's the budget, so we're trying to, like I think Adam said the right way, we're trying to put some levers in to allow us to hit a number.
Right, let's see here, and then we can include kind of the preliminary plan for the phase 3 ice piece. This one, we were kind of 30–40% through design development on this one when we got the budget for phase 1 and 2. So we've kind of put this on hold, and once 1 and 2 get out to bid, our team is going to shift our focus back to this component and take it through the rest of the design development. But we've done a little bit of work kind of looking at, like Marty said, with some of the shifts we made in phase 1 and 2, we don't anticipate the need for that kind of big phase 4, which allows some opportunity maybe to get a resurfacing room and a better location right off the end of the ice sheet. And then also anticipating with that piece using the state funding and needing to be B3 requirements, having a pump room, and still likely having a geothermal system on site and some of those other kind of renewables and energy conscious decisions.
Are you, if you're gonna do geothermal, it's gotta come one way or the other around that building to come off from 82.
So, yeah, so right now the anticipation is that there'd likely be a well field to the west.
So you're anticipating putting a well field in versus working with AOP?
Correct.
Why is that?
I think generally, the requirements ask for on-site strategies. So one, I'm not sure if we can kind of borrow and swap or what have you, if that's what you're getting at.
Well, AOP is an entity of the city.
Right.
Right, but it specifically says on-site.
Right.
Well, it is, it's coming up.
I know.
But even where we're at today, we did have a preliminary scoping study done by a third party that specializes in the geothermal design, and that came back very favorable. That there's likely 2 or 3 different systems that we could put in there that have varying degrees in the number of wells and the depth of wells. So as we kind of wrap this up and we pick back up on this phase 3, we're going to be digging into that.
Conversation.
More
Exactly.
conversation.
Yep.
So does this fall under a scenario because you'd have to go for variance to put the well in? The wells, AOP isn't going to allow any wells to go in.
I mean, there's a lot to unpack.
Yep.
Roger.
A lot.
There's a lot to unpack. And like I said, the preliminary findings for on-site opportunities are good, and there looks like there might be different depth options and all sorts of things. But this third-party group did a really thorough, feasibility analysis, looking at what wells are already in the area, to what depths, and kind of what they can generate and that sort of thing. So we've got a lot of really good information at a very preliminary stage on that component.
And I don't have the ordinance in front of me, but I think the ordinance that we have regarding wells, there's an exception for geothermal
Oh,
in terms of the restriction on new private wells.
You're not
Okay.
sucking water out
Sucking
necessarily.
water,
You're just looping it
yeah,
and borrowing
yeah.
the energy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
okay.
And I know we are, on a couple other projects, some of the newer well technologies, trade names Darcy wells, so you typically end up with 2 or 3 wells instead of 180 like in Burnsville. So it's a little different technology which minimizes site impact and works well. But what we wanted to do really on this phase 3 is if we have to go that route, we want to make sure we have space to do it. If we can get rid of it, yeah, but at least we know we can make it work. And that's that water pump room. There was a lot of discussion around that stupid little rectangle on how big it needed to be and all that stuff. So I think that was important.
Well, and I know we're gonna have conversations when we get into after the first
Yeah.
round.
Yeah.
My thought is, well, okay, you're talking to the west of the old rink there, well, that's where the parking's going. So then you're gonna be beyond that.
But generally, they can be within a parking field, so they can
Yeah.
pop up in an island. That's what we're doing a lot is to integrate them right into the parking. Because obviously, if they're closer to the building, they're more economical. It's less
Yeah.
piping, right? And and there was some recognition of that even in the study we got back. It was like, this system might be more economical because X, Y, and Z. So,
Okay, all right.
yeah, yep.
I'll leave it
So
alone.
yeah,
We kind of dropped it because this
Focusing on this.
that little whatever color that is of the existing locker rooms, that yellowish in the green area. It's one of the more complicated pieces that we're working on across the office. It's complex because we're trying to connect so many multiple levels, so many building types, so many, dealing with drifting load and snow loads. There's more packed into that little rectangle than any other project in our office right now.
If we go like we're doing this year, you shouldn't have to worry about snow loss.
yeah, right.
If that's the future for us.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Okay, so then we've done some updates to the exterior. One of the things that we talked about revising the last couple months was doing this wall out of precast concrete to try and set up some efficiencies with that future phase 3. That box was going to be a precast concrete wall panel box. So we've been working with our structural engineers to do incorporate that. So you can kind of see the line of where that system kind of changes, but the idea is that these metal panels we would use to kind of integrate and kind of make the building, that big chunk, kind of read as kind of one integrated thing versus just having a very blunt line there, if you will. So that would be the entry on the west there, and then if you kind of step back a little bit, you can kind of see that in the west rink in the background. This is that new water room. And the new entry, some opportunity for signage, and these windows are strategically located where we need openings in phase 3, right? So these two here would be for loading those bleachers, the spectator seats in that future phase. So a lot of this is driven by planning for phase 3.
Good.
Okay, that's kind of the high-level design update. Let's look at the schedule here. So in pre-construction, I touched on a little bit of this with kind of where we're at. We're in that last week of February. We're wrapping up construction documents. We had a meeting a couple weeks ago with a really good turnout of local contractors to just show them the current design and try and garner any interest for any potential in-kind donations. As we'd like to ideally have an idea of what that could entail around March 1st. But like I said, we had 20 plus people covering 8, 9 different trades. So I think we were really pleased with that. And then, as Marty mentioned, that March 11th is when we'd be looking to the council to authorize going out for bidding. And then bidding would be a little under a month. So sometime early, mid-April, we get those bid results back. in time for RJM and our team to review and vet those out, and then we'd be looking at a potential approval to move forward at the second council meeting in April, if you will. And then we do permitting and move into contracts and procurement and get everything rolling. That's phase 1 and 2. And then construction would be, starting possibly around May. And occupancy, you can see to be determined. We do have a rough construction schedule in here. We'll highlight here in just a minute. The phase 3 anticipated schedule, again, keyword there, anticipated. We anticipate that we'll be able to wrap up those DD drawings sometime in May. And then see what happens with funding and bidding and all that good stuff. And then, this is really
Probably
TBD as well, when you guys would say, hey, let's move forward with the documents on phase 3, and then, construction, TBD on that.
And what is DD drawings? What's the date?
Yeah, so that's our design development phase, Roger.
Gotcha.
So like there's the schematic, and then the design development, and then the construction documents.
Yep.
So it's about 40% through the process of design and engineering. And what it does is it kind of sets all those systems up, because we use a lot of that information to inform the phase 1 and 2, right? Opening locations, heights, all that. So we needed that good information. But then also it'll allow RJM to then put another round of estimates on phase 3. So we can just dial that cost in a little more. So there's a method to the madness.
Okay.
So yeah, if we get, those are done in May, like Tom said, RJM will run another round of estimates, so really, when you guys get to June, July, you'll have bids for 1 and 2, you'll have updated budget numbers from the CM on this piece, so you should be sitting pretty good and having a clear idea of your project costs. So. All right, I know this is tiny, don't expect you to read it, but Vinny and our team has been working very closely with RJM, looking at different scenarios for the actual construction sequencing. So this is what the construction manager's schedule looks like. So I've highlighted a few things here. So their phase 1, which they would anticipate starting in June, would be renovations on kind of the lobby, the middle portion of the building that's out there now between the 2 rinks. And then come fall, August, and the summer, they would start on the building addition. And then when they get through this coming year's ice season, then they would start to do the locker room renovations. And they could potentially knock those out over that summer of 2025, which is huge because it allows Vinny and his crew to have those locker rooms available during the ice season. So RJM looked at 2 scenarios. One had the locker rooms kind of happening earlier in the process, but that was going to require temporary facilities, temporary storage, potentially building temporary locker rooms. And I think Vinny, like I said, has been working closely with RJM and kind of working through this. And I think this looks like it'll be the most economical, because there's probably less temporary facilities. And then the overall schedule, maybe 4 weeks it could maybe add, but probably a net win for the city. So I don't know, Vinny, if you want to add anything, or Marty, on that piece.
Well, I guess, the building is self-contained, so we have to have a complete electrical movement. And we'd have to run additional or temporary power. This way we just stay as we are. Heating, air conditioning all stays the same. Everything would stay the same until we get into it, and that would give contractors an opportunity to establish a new electrical room. Right. Plus they'd be able to establish the heat, ready to go. Otherwise, we're not, I don't know how they're gonna manage that, I don't know, but
And also,
at first, I'll be honest, I didn't really like it a lot, but then when the more I started thinking about it, it's, we are self-contained.
yeah, right.
So everything that's there, we need, we're gonna use, and we get the new stuff built, and then we can do the switch over. I mean, the power, I don't know what that would take today.
short duration versus having
Well,
temporary
versus
power.
running, and then a couple locker rooms are gonna have to be out the back end of the building. And, you know, I don't know how much,
Right.
Tom, you know how many you can fit a team in?
What's that?
What do you need, 2 for each team?
Yeah,
So we need 6
right.
temporary, which that's gonna be a heck. I mean,
It's
they're not
an
gonna give them out
expense, and
free.
we've done it before, but I think we have an opportunity here not to. And then also what I think about is procurement. I don't care what anyone says, it's still an issue. So this also allows some of that procurement on the HVAC equipment and some of that stuff to be better set, so when they're ready next summer, they can just go and build. And so I think we have less chance of having hiccups from a procurement standpoint too. But, you know, the temp locker rooms they're tough from an operational standpoint. And you spend a lot of money on a bunch of plywood and Menards doors that you just throw in a dumpster later on. So I think it's the best use of city funds.
I think from a tenant perspective, you know, the 3 tenants who have permanent locker rooms and then the 2 high school teams in the Blizzard, they
Yep.
were looking at a scenario where you'd have, at best, temporary locker room for half the season next year and then have to move in December, January into new locker rooms like that. And now they'll be in their old space for 1 more season, but then when their season is done in April, they pull their stuff out, and then, you know, if they're done in August of 25, those seasons won't begin again until October or November, so they have some time to move in
Fit 'em all,
versus,
yep.
you know, having to go right now into a new space in the middle of the season, install their new lockers.
Things they don't want to be dealing with after the
Right,
season.
right.
This allows both the city and those tenants to control a destination instead of reacting to a bunch of fires. You know what I mean? Because they're in season, it's a pain. Gives them a chance to, some of them may have to fundraise a little longer for build-outs and this and that, so I think it makes sense.
So is the 11 million the number you're trying to shift it down to? Is that,
That is the target.
that's the target yet?
Yep. Yep, exactly.
So you saw some significant moves that were, I think as a team, we have those weekly meetings that you kind of just work through and ask what ifs, and I think through that process, just cleaned it up. From both documentation, having it cleaner for bidding, able to work and fine tune all the toilet counts and get all that stuff dialed in, and then still plan for phase 3. So I think we've been through how many iterations? I don't know. We ran out of the alphabet, I think.
So these in-kind need to be in by March 1st?
If people are interested in
If they're going to?
making donations in advance of the bidding process, there still will be a way, you know, through the bidding process, if people want to note that they're
Oh.
making an in-kind donation, to do that as well. But
Okay.
if there's a donation in advance of the bid documents going out, then you can just note on the bid, you know, provided by others, and it isn't included in the bid itself.
Right.
We'll see what happens with that. You know, obviously, we're looking at, in the long run, 2 potential projects. So there may be, you know, as we kind of told people who were there, it's like, there's going to be a couple of opportunities to bid and participate in these projects if we move ahead with both parts. So, but I've had a few calls and inquiries, and we'll see.
But there is a way then, once the bids go out, to add the in-kind to it yet at that point?
We actually they make it part of the bid form, RJM.
Okay.
So there's good accounting for it.
So we're working with 11 million. If we get in kind of a $500,000, then we're looking at 10 and a half. So that's the moving part right now.
Yeah, that's the, you know, if it's, we won't know that, you know, if people do something at the bid process, we won't know until we open the bids.
Right.
Correct.
Yeah, you know, so there's, you know, we'll have to, and we'll talk at our next work session, we're gonna dial in the financing schedule.
Okay.
Now that we have this, you know, how much will we know on financing if we get a lot more in kind than we're expecting, or bids are lower, you know, can we adjust that number? You know, and so that's what Jane and Heather and we were talking about last week is, you know, when do we not to get too into the weeds, but there's a point in time when this project gets underway, we've got bills we need to pay, we need to have those bond proceeds. So then you kind of work backwards from, you know, when you need those proceeds. So then when does the hearing have to take place? When do the resolutions and the set sale have to take place? We'll talk in a couple weeks because we're still dialing it in. To dial it in just perfect, we may need to have a special council meeting at some point in May or June to just take that action, because as we're learning with the bond count, you don't want to do a bond sale on the Tuesday after Memorial Day. We learned that but that's why we have our financial advisor, you know, he's like, that's not the best day to do it. Well, that's our second council meeting in May. And then the first council meeting in June 10th, apparently that's the week of a federal open market committee meeting. So there's uncertainty on what the day before a FMOC meeting, so everyone's like, well, what's the Fed gonna do the next day? So that felt like, okay, well, that makes sense. So that's where we're kind of like late May, early June, you know, we're working on our audit, just kind of prepping you for that discussion in a couple weeks. I mean, it's only a 20-minute, half-hour meeting, but that may make the most sense to try to get the financing done at just the right time. Because there's about 30 days from the time you sell the bonds, to when the proceeds show up in your bank account. And you know, if you start construction mid-May, your first bills are mid-June. You know, we have money in the bank, obviously, but can't carry months and months of construction. So that's kind of the financing timing.
Well, it looks good.
Thank you.
Any other questions on the design itself? You know, I think Adam and Tom did a good job of explaining kind of what we're doing. We've, you know, Mo's been coordinating with them on the electrical and the RCC technology side, and as Adam has warned us, we have a 6-hour meeting tomorrow to go through some details.
We'll provide you lunch. Got that covered already.
But all part of that.
So you are having that alternate bid for that floor area up top.
Yep.
Just roughly figure, if we were to get $500,000 in kind, would that cover something like that, or nothing close? Or?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Nope.
Just
Yep.
putting
Yep.
the floor in.
For sure. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Yep. And you know, like we said, you know, the goal is to have levers, right? So none of us can control the bid climate, right? It is what it is. You open those bids, that's what you get. Having some alternates, you know, having some, you know, contingency, you know, those are the different things that we can start to say, hey, got a lot of good in-kind, you know, numbers came in good, we get to take that alternate, put that space in right away, and we have some really great opportunities. And, you know,
Well, yeah,
go the other way too, right?
I can see some opportunities for us or people to rent out for space or something if they wanted a big area or something, if we had that available. So, especially with the elevators there.
Or,
Yeah,
events of sort.
the elevator really is going to be, I mean, for people who use the facility every day, I mean, that's going to be a huge piece. You know, my mother-in-law uses a walker this year, and we went around to all the places, road games, and you have some pretty primitive accessibility. I mean, we've all seen the gate. You've got to go find someone to get a key to let you in, and you know, even the Mac in St. Cloud, we were like halfway in the Zamboni room and going to a service entrance. I mean, they have it, or kind of have it in a lot of places, but they don't. It's not easy, and we're going to have an elevator like you see it, and you can just use it.
Right. Yeah. Well, it's amazing. I mean, that elevator placement kind of started to dictate a lot of design, because we got to hit all these levels to give you a fully accessible building, which is the goal, you know, one of the goals. So, yeah, it's be a nice project if hopefully, and we're working hard to try to protect the budget best we can with the abilities we have. So,
With that said, though, I mean, hearing it from you, but it's the guy behind you there. Because no, really, I mean, I know you put your heart and soul into this, Vinny, and you know, thought it many times over and over and over. Is there anything that you're just
No, not really.
no?
Stewing about it.
Yeah, I was gonna say, is there anything that was taken away that you're like, really?
No, I don't think so. No, I think it's a good plan. We've changed it a million times every, you know. I think too much, so I'm driving Adam crazy.
Well, I mean,
But no,
all good.
No, I mean, it's.
Great,
you know,
great things. He's thinking ahead, you know, always.
I just think we're
Just
gonna
think
get,
ahead to see what, what's coming next,
Right.
and make it right, so that,
we're gonna get one swing at this.
yeah.
Right.
You know, and I just want everybody to
Yep.
be on the same page, so to speak, and,
I
this has
think,
been
the
long
latest
coming.
one was, doing the locker rooms, we're gonna do them first, but now we're doing them last, but when we think about it, it makes a lot of sense, because it's actually saving us money. Yeah, we might be out another month, but you start with those temporary locker rooms, and, it's just not a good situation. But I can't think of anything, really, to be honest with you guys.
Yeah, we touched on it a little bit, but Vinny and Matt kind of brought to the table that, and we had talked about that meeting room, up in let's have a meeting room initially, renovate that upper level east side lobby and make that a meeting room. It's a great idea, but, we try to cut scope and trying to take that work out of the old building because it complicates, B3 and part of what drives those costs. Vinny and Matt made the suggestion, what about moving our space upstairs on that second level where they showed it? Again, space we already are building. And now instead of a gigantic open hallway, still a lot of room up there,
Yep.
office complex, and then that allows a meeting room and storage room right by the new entrance to the building, which, as we all kind of looked at, I think is a better place for that anyways. And that was a big piece for, I think, the operations side for tournaments, as Adam noted. Right now, if you're there, if you happen to be there for the Might Jamboree or even for other tournaments and events, you just set up 8-foot tables in the lobby, and that takes up precious lobby space. Now we'll have a room where you can configure and people can go check in, get some of that stuff out of the lobby and have a space for people to utilize that room will be a big, and then it'll be available, the rest of the time. It could be a room, a kind of a community room too, for any community groups to use. And it's also right by the front door, which helps if it's a little bit more open to the public. You don't have people walking all the way through the building to get to the meeting room.
Well, I think the big part too is that, what the public doesn't know is the amount of time that has been spent with you guys. My time, everything that goes on. You're not gonna come along and drop $2 million in and think you're gonna get a project like this done. I don't wanna hear that from the public side of things. It's like, well, they need to understand the complexity, and the complexity is in this first piece. There's a lot to it.
There's a lot to it.
And then going forward, then we have to deal with the B3 requirements. And you're not gonna do that for $1 million. So you might as well erase that from the board as far as that goes. This is huge. So,
This phase 1 and 2 cleans up your existing facility, takes care of accessibility, helps operationally, cleans up all of that and sets you up for success with phase 3. And I think that's what excites us the most, is how we've gone through this and we ground this thing up 100 different ways, right, to get to this point. But it really sets, I think, up the facility to be, just a significant asset to the city. It allows you to do more with it, especially when you look at your food shows and different activities beyond ice that you hold. It really sets itself up well for that. And it's taken a while to get here. But I think it's good.
So shifting that grant money over to the phase 3 then definitely saves us a bunch of money then?
The state.
The state?
Absolutely, and we kind of touched on it a little bit, I think, before too, but when you look at phase 1 and 2, it's a bunch of little boxes, right? And all those little boxes have much higher requirements for energy use and air and ventilation than just a simple big box, right? So if you look at kind of pound for pound, applying V3 to all these little, multitude of spaces versus one big box, inherently it's going to be more economical to incorporate.
And then when
that.
we were renovating in existing spaces, it started to expand all that into those spaces,
Right.
which on a bell curve, it just really went up. So I think it was, we're still doing what the state, wants. We want energy efficiency. We're spending those dollars, even though they're pre-pandemic dollars, spending them the best way possible, getting the best bang for the buck out of them, and not applying B3 like lipstick, where we're putting it on to be inherent into the facility and do what it should do. So I think it's good all the way around.
So again, the thought is, there's two actions on March 11th. It would be asking the council to advertise for bids. And then the second piece, this is what we talked about with the budget committee. We walked through the design services agreement, and I'm going to just hand out, maybe Adam can toss these around. Obviously, the simplest way to explain it, and Adam's put together a table here, and Tom's got a memo that he put together, but the way the project is designed when we first contemplated it, and like many architectural contracts, it's based on the total cost of the facility. So we were looking at, in mid-December, at a potential cost when we were, just as we were talking about all of the B3, all those kinds of things, it was approaching $17 million. And the design fees for that, based on our agreement, would be 5.5%. And the middle column of the spreadsheet that's going on kind of shows you the estimate of what we would have paid if we went forward with that. As we all know, we kind of hit the brakes, trying to bring that cost down to 11. But, and this is where Tom, you and Adam can kind of jump in, it's involved us kind of redoing and rethinking many things. And in their memo, they've kind of itemized what that is, and it's not just JLG, it's all of your subcontractors. So what we presented to the budget committee is a way to update our design services agreement to represent that some of the things we've had to do and the team's had to do multiple times. So I'll let you guys kind of take it from there.
Yeah. Well, I think, the big thing is it's been, duration and the multiple looks at this, trying to figure out a way to get this project to be at a number that can move it forward and get creative, so it wasn't just one project. We designed it, but we've been through multiple iterations, and we kept trying to make the fees work, but they just weren't. All our consultants are pushing back, and so Adam and I sat down, went through everything, went through ad nauseum. This was a simplified spreadsheet from what we were getting from our consultants, and kind of went through it and had a number, and then I said, back to the consultants and even looking at us, saying we're not looking to really even make money on these additional services. It's raw cost. So it would be over $200,000. I got all the consultants and so on to pull back profit out of it and those things, because we're so far down the line. We just want to see something happen here. And you can read through each one, but there's numbers, and it starts to add up, and we're trying to just stop it and minimize it. It's really the duration. I mean, today this project should be open and people should be skating on it, and we're still in design, and our time is just dragging out. So we can get into some specifics if need be, but we're just trying to make sure we're compensated, at least covering our operational, not the profit net on these services.
So we kind of reviewed it from the staff perspective. I mean, we were looking at a scenario under our existing agreement based on our best estimate of what we had at design development in mid-December, and what we think phase 3 may have cost of probably about $1.31 million in potential fees. With what we're proposing here, with the redesign, shaving the cost down, estimating phase 3, we're at about 1.25 million. So there is still some scope reduction there as we look at the overall cost. It's going to be, or should be, I'll say less or pretty much a net wash. And from my perspective, I mean, this was a conversation we expected to have when we were going back and doing things multiple times. We're we're spending some money to reduce the cost of this phase 1 and 2 by probably $6 million is what we're hoping to do. So not surprising. So, you know, budget committee met. I think there's we have no action on this tonight, but the reason why it's a council action to change the design services agreement, because we'll need to write an amendment that reflects these additional services, where it's not just going to be a flat percentage, because we've got a different kind of setup that we've walked through. And all of these design costs as well are going to be rolled into the bond issuance that we do, are eligible for reimbursement. So, you know, when we've been talking about how much we're going to issue the debt for, you know, we're using these figures of 1.3 as the overall for the entire cost. So it doesn't substantially change, in my view, what we're going to be doing for debt service either. It's just it's the reality, I think, of where we're at with, as Tom said, you know, this has been a project that we've been working on since May of 2021, really, when the first kickoff meeting was. Yeah. And here we are 3 years later. But I think, and I really appreciate you guys kind of itemizing this out for each of the categories and structural, civil, those kinds of things. This isn't, I know that you guys went back and talked to everyone, and these aren't just kind of like, well, numbers pulled out of the air by people. This is dollars attached to each project element.
And you know, and you see one of the biggest numbers is mechanical, electrical, and plumbing, and that's because they take a huge hit on, you know, the B3 engineering. I mean, these systems are complex to go through, and then we got to dial back, and then, you know, we're back and forth, and then setting up for future phase 3. So it's a lot of work on their part. So, and they've always been a good partner working with us on these types of things. So.
Well, I suspect that you learned a lot from this. Right?
Right.
So going forward, I mean, to the benefit of the parties that are involved and yourselves, I mean, this has been a process.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And for future, there'll be benefit to the companies involved. I would hope.
Yeah, maybe, you know.
Well, I mean, you know,
Yeah.
in all fairness, I mean,
Yeah.
when you look at it, but, you know, I appreciate the detail in this. You know, and I guess I expected it too. You know, there's got to be give and take in this.
Right.
You know, and if we can't figure this part out, we're still in that same.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
You know. We got 1 foot on the dock, boys, and 1 on the boat.
That's one way.
So,
Says the fisherman. or this year, the 1 foot on this chunk of ice and 1 foot on this
one
chunk
on
of
the
ice.
shore, one on the ice.
Right? Breaking apart.
Yeah. Yep.
I think that's all.
All right.
That's all we
Yeah.
have.
It's
Yeah.
Okay.
an update where we're at, what we're doing. You know, we're excited to see this thing bid. And,
Well, thanks for Tom for being here, Adam.
Make it real.
Thank you.
yeah.
So,
Don't keep Marty and Vinny too late. They have a big day tomorrow.
6
Yeah,
hours.
yeah, right. We need their full attention tomorrow.
What time are you starting?
9
o'clock.
to 3, I think we got blocked out, so.
There you go.
Marty, I'll grab Jeff and Nicole.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Adam. Thanks, Tom. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
That's your-
Yep.